and welcome to another episode of the Unlocking Fitness podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Pitts, and today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 critical coach education secrets for coach development officers who wants to build hugely competent and effective coaches. So I've been educating and developing sports and fitness coaches for over 5 years now, and I know that coach development is one of the hardest jobs in the health and fitness industry. Coach developers are the ones who have been, seen and done it all over many decades of experience, and because of that vast experience, we're the ones who can see what needs to change in the industry. We're the ones who are prepared to have the difficult conversations, and we're the ones who are willing to put in the hard yards to make those changes happen. We see the problems that coaches come up against, and the issues that sports clubs and fitness organisations have too. And we take all our experience, all of those problems, and innovate our little brains out to bring new solutions that raise the skills and profiles of our sports and fitness coaches everywhere. So if you're at all interested in coach development, listen closely, because these 3 secrets will not only make your life easier, but make you the raving success you're always dreamed of. So what are the secrets? Now I know many of you want to know what's coming so that you can listen properly, so I'll give you a brief overview now and then we'll dig into each one in more detail. So secret number 1, the number 1 reason why most coach development officers won't set their organisation above and beyond the rest and what you can do instead. The secret number 2, injury hacking, your secret weapon in the fight for competent and effective coaches. And secret number 3, how to turn a simple idea into a coach development empire and guarantee coaches stay within their scope of practice. So now you know what's coming, let's dig into secret number 1. The number 1 reason why most coach development officers won't set their organisation above and beyond the rest and what you can do instead. So the reason why some clubs and organisations succeed is because they're prepared to go further and look in places that no one else is willing to. And coach development is no different. If you want to set yourselves apart from everyone else, you just can't follow the same development opportunities as they are. I mean, of course, recognised sporting qualifications and in coaching and in professional fitness are a requirement, but they are just the bare minimum because every other club and organisation has got those too. And of course then there's specialisms, especially in the fitness industry, but they aren't for everyone. In fact, the whole point of specialist qualifications is to exclude people, and the industry is doing a great job of that, especially when it comes to sport injury management. So in 2017, UK Coaching conducted a national coaching population survey in which they reported that of the 3 million coaches in the UK, over half had no coaching qualifications. Now to some people that might seem quite scandalous, but when you take a sport like martial arts, many instructors, masters, and people at the highest levels didn't actually take a formal coaching test. They just had enough experience or did enough gradings to rise through the ranks. And the natural progression is then that they help others to do the same. Now these people are dedicated, generous volunteers who are doing the best they can to help the sport they love. It's not their fault they don't have these certificates. I mean, sometimes the development pathway just doesn't exist. But to help with injuries, you must not only take recognised fitness qualifications, which many sports coaches don't want to do, whether they have a coaching certificate or not, but you must become a personal trainer, which costs thousands of pounds, and then take injury specialist qualifications, which costs even more. And the reality is that all coaches of all levels cannot escape the subject of injuries. So injuries don't care what sport you coach, how old the people are that you're coaching, or what qualifications you have. Every coach will encounter someone who has or has had pain at some point in their lifetime. So while everyone else is waiting for that pain to happen so they can refer them somewhere else, you can do something different. And that's where injury hacking comes in. So there are 3 principles that injury hacking is based on. 1 is stop focusing on what we can't do and focus on what we can. 2 is use the skills that coaches are already great at. And 3 is make it accessible for everyone to do a little bit. So the idea behind injury hacking came from a surgical team in an operating theatre. Now, I've mentioned in previous episodes that I've had my own injury problems, from the crippling back pain of spinal ligament strains and the constant burning pain of my bicep tendon dropping out of its groove, to the endless frustration of my ankle bone shifting and limiting my ankle movement. And over the last 2 decades, I've also dedicated my life to learning everything I can about injuries from a personal training standpoint and from a soft tissue or manual therapy standpoint too. And I can tell you, it's a really lonely old journey no matter which way you look at it. Every therapist and specialist coach is fighting for themselves, trying to use their qualifications to set themselves apart from every other therapist and specialist coach out there who's doing exactly the same as them. And many of these people look down their noses at others who don't have the level of knowledge that they have because they're desperate to be seen as being above, separate, or just better. But coaches can't escape injuries. And if we continue to bicker about who knows more, the perpetual losers are the very people we say we're trying to help. Now, our people come to us for help in getting active, but we can't help them if they don't tell us when they're having problems. And they don't tell us when they're having problems if they think that we can't help them. And let's face it, with the current system, 99%, let's say, of coaches can't. And that's why injury hacking is different. In an operating theatre, you have the surgeon who does all the delicate work, then you have a room full of other people who have different jobs, but those jobs support what the surgeon is doing. And injury hacking does the same with injuries. We take the small jobs that everyone can do without knowing the first thing about the injuries themselves and make learning those jobs accessible to every coach. We don't try to drag coaches off down specialism routes. We take the coaching skills that they already have and marry up those with useful injury skills. And 2 of the most powerful of those skills are observation and movement. So here's an example of how it works. Let's say you're in a sports club. You have coaches who are qualified to run sessions by themselves and a few assistant coaches or volunteer helpers. Now, assistant coaches have some of the most powerful eyeballs in the industry. They often feel overlooked because they are just assistant coaches, but they have the chance to see the small things that the main coaches miss when they're busy leading the whole group session. Injury hacking gives these coaches the skills to identify the buildup of emotional and physical stress that leads to potential injury problems, both before they become painful and painful problems that their participants are simply hiding for some reason or other, usually fear of stopping training or drawing attention to themselves. Once these coaches know what to look for, they can be the eyes and ears of your club, helping to keep players and members injury-free so they can fulfill their sporting potential or simply keep showing up each week. And this contributes to the safeguarding, well-being and mental health of the participants, as well as helping coaches to feel confident that their input is safe and effective, confident that they know exactly where they stand when it comes to what they can and can't do with injury problems, and feel like a valued member of your organisation. Now, movement is what sports and fitness coaches do best, but repetitive movement is one of the leading contributing factors for many minor sporting injuries. So if we educate our coaches on how to easily and simply include variety of non-painful movement into what they coach, and how to apply that to their given sport or area of fitness, we can go a long way towards staving off the aches, pains, pulls and strains that continue to plague our active populations, often for many years. And because we're dealing with non-painful movement, it doesn't exclude or discriminate against anyone, and it can easily help with all aspects of coaching, from motivation and mindset to balance and coordination, with a healthy dose of mobility, agility, rest and recovery thrown in for good measure, all without putting extra pressure or work or adding to the coach's responsibility. Plus, when we combine the observational powers of the assistant coach and the applied variety of movement knowledge of the session coach, we've got a really powerful 1-2 punch combo. But most people who are interested in coach development will never look at sports injuries as a way of improving coaching skills because they're stuck in the false belief that non-specialist coaches are not allowed to help with sports injury, when the reality is that it's not a coach's responsibility to deal with pain, but there's a subtle and vast difference between helping with injury and trying to fix pain. So secret number 2, it's injury hacking, your secret weapon in the fight for competent and effective coaches. So everything you're trying to do or achieve as a coach comes down to three basic factors. First, joint health. Second, heart health. And third is mental health. Now, it doesn't matter whether your focus is on speed, endurance, motivation, mindset, or strength, or anything else. Everything is underpinned by these three factors. And there's only two things that can influence all three factors at once. One is nutrition, and two is joint movement. If your nutrition is poor, you have inflammation, which affects your ability to move, joint health, which affects your ability to exercise, heart health, and can make you feel a bit rubbish, mental health. So by the same token, if your joints don't move properly because they're too stiff, joint health, your ability to train is impaired, heart health, which makes you feel rubbish, mental health. So since nutrition is beyond the scope of my expertise, I'm just going to focus on joint movement. Now, a lack of joint movement is a physical stress to the body, and it's a survival thing. If someone pins you down or stops you being able to move, your anxiety increases because you can't get away. Now, it's the same with animals. I mean, I've done it play fighting with my dog. When she can't move, she yelps like I've stood on her foot or something. Anxiety is an emotional stress, which also causes increased tension throughout the body, which creates more physical stress. And emotional and physical stress are the two leading risk factors for injury, and pain is the one thing that stops everything coaches are trying to achieve. So it doesn't matter whether the pain is a blister on your heel while you're hiking, or some itis or syndrome that's been hanging around for decades and flares up at the worst possible moment. If people have pain, they can't train. And that stops all improvements in joint, heart, and mental health. And the brain can't tell the difference between emotional and physical stress. It's all just stress. And stress has physical clues. And law enforcement agencies have been watching these physical signs of stress for decades to tell when a suspect is lying. And sports injury therapists, including myself, have been using them to detect underlying problems that the patients cannot or will not verbalize for whatever reason. And when sports and fitness coaches know how to observe these same physical signs of stress, we can use them to make more informed decisions about how to look after and support the people in our care with their health and fitness journeys. Now, there's loads of reasons why people don't say anything about their minor aches and pains. It could be an embarrassment of drawing attention to themselves in front of a group. Teenage girls comes to mind. They might not have the vocabulary to explain what they feel, if they're young children or something. They might not want to be thought of as a burden, which is common amongst older people, or they might have been struggling with this problem for so long that they just don't notice it anymore. So whatever their reasons, if we can see these problems, we can save people the indignity and hassle of having to tell us about it. And this is a strategy I've been using for decades, but only realised I was doing it a few years ago when I started to write the Coach's Guide to Long-Term Injury Prevention Success book. And I call it the Eyes, Ears, Ask, Give strategy. So a brief overview. Number 1, eyes. Observe body language, postures, behaviours and reactions, which are the physical signs of stress. Number 2, ears. Listen to what the person is saying. And often what you'll find is that what you see and what they say are very different. 3, ask. Ask them for their suggestion on the solution. And number 4 is give. This is where we tailor your coaching to give them what they want and what they need. An example of this is a personal training client I had about 20 years ago. He was a director in a big company, and the company was going through a merger, which put a lot of strain on him at work. And he had 2 young kids, which meant that his home life was really busy too. So he came to his session once with his shoulders really slumped and a really weary look on his face. And honestly, he looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. I listened to him tell me that he hadn't managed to get any training done since last time I saw him because he'd been really busy, but what I could see was that he was just too stressed out to cope with any more physical stress. So my immediate thought was to do some kind of lower impact stretch type session with him. But I paused and asked him what he would like to do. And he just said to me, I really feel like I need to hit something. And I have a martial arts background, so we did a short boxing session with the pads so he could get out some of his frustration. And then we spent longer than usual improving his movement to lower the overall stress on his body. And he finished the session really happy. And he said, "Do you know, that was just what I needed." Now, many coaches and trainers get freaked out by the idea of injury prevention because they think they have to learn about the injuries themselves. But injury hacking gives you the practical skills to be able to layer powerful injury prevention methods into what you're already doing with a few simple tweaks. And I know that if I'd have done the original session that I had planned with my client that day, he'd have ended up pulling a muscle or coming down with some cold or other in the next few days. It doesn't really matter how much we humans think we know, the body will always win. It has an uncanny knack of forcing us to stop when we can't take it anymore. So if we really want to be competent and effective coaches, dealing with just one thing that helps everything else improve is a fantastic strategy, and joint movement is that one thing. Secret number 3, how to turn a simple idea into a coach development empire and guarantee coaches stay within their scope of practice. So the sports and fitness industries have been built on separation. Whether it's the gym team and group exercise instructors in a fitness organisation or different coach levels in a sports club, there's always been this them and us mentality. Like somehow each of us needs to be put in a box with a label on it. At the end of the day, we're all really helpful people just doing our level best to help others stay active. And when we all work together, each with our own strengths, that's when the magic truly happens. And with injury hacking, this is really easy, just like in the surgical environment I mentioned earlier. And developing coaches isn't about the content they learn. It's about learning from each other and learning to work together as a cohesive unit, and that takes communication. No matter what side of the injury conversation you're on, whether you're the patient or the coach or the therapist, the one thing we have in common is movement. And when movement, or a lack of it, becomes our communication channel, we can elevate the role all coaches can play in sports injuries and become the key players we really are, instead of being sidelined or ignored. And this works best within clubs and organisations who adopt a culture of injury hacking where the levels of injury hacking knowledge match the coaching journey. So pretty much every coach starts out by helping, whether they're officially an assistant coach or not. And if the injury hacking mission is to succeed, we need to eliminate confusion and ensure every coach has a minimum but exceptionally effective basic injury hacking skill set. So with the Injury Hacking Secrets Training Level 1, every coach from an assistant volunteer to a veteran professional personal trainer can get to grips with the most powerful injury hacking rules, tools and strategies you can use from the very first second of each session. A Level 2 builds on those basics and follows coaches as they qualify to run their own sessions without supervision. With the Injury Hacking certification, coaches learn new concepts and simple movement practices that transform warm-ups and cool-downs into an endless stream of injury hacking gold that can be used with any population, in any setting, even with large groups of mixed ages and abilities. But the Injury Hacking for Performance Level 3 course takes things up another gear for coaches who are certified to coach individuals on a one-to-one basis. On an individual level, coaches learn to identify the movement patterns that are at the root of the vast majority of minor sporting injuries and chronic aches and pains. They learn how to simplify and fast-track skill acquisition, use the exclusive movement techniques they learned on the Level 2 training to build resistance and resilience against injury, and how to program for joint movement improvement alongside the training goals. And for coaches who want to take things to the next level, there's the Injury Hacking Specialist course, which is Level 4. And this allows coaches to take a unique approach to the injury problem, considering the entire picture, from what the client believes about their issues to the types of interventions involved. And this makes it easy for coaches to help clients achieve everything they've dreamed of, but probably haven't succeeded with in the past, to complement any treatment plan from medical professionals, and in doing so, provide unparalleled support to the therapist and client alike. Now, with each of the injury hacking levels comes a clearly defined role, which helps clubs and organisations create a seamless culture of injury hacking, where coaches of all levels can work together. And this culture is recognised through the Injury Hacking Approved Centre Award, which helps clubs and organisations stand out in a super crowded marketplace and create a coach development pathway that easily aligns with all of your other visions and cultural practices. But like I said before, most sporting organisations will never even consider a sports injury as an area that they can use to develop their coaches, because they're too hung up on the idea that pain is not the coach's responsibility. And it isn't, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing that coaches can do to help. Sometimes all it takes is a small step in a different direction to discover exciting new opportunities. So if you're interested in creating an injury hacking culture inside your club or organisation, let's take that small step and start a conversation. You can contact me via the website and I'll put the link in the show notes. I hope you've enjoyed this little journey into creating competent and effective coaches. Thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to your company on the next episode. The Unlocking Fitness podcast is a Most Motion original, hosted by me, Sarah Pitts. It's based on the Unlocking Fitness book series, which you can get from unlockingfitness.com. At the time of recording, book 1 in the series is available, with books 2 to 5 in the pipeline. You can find more Most Motion at mostmotion.com and on Facebook at Most Motion.